Welcome to Prepared for Parenthood, the podcast for hopeful, expectant, and new parents with little ones up to age 5, as well as the professionals who work with them. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Duger, a psychotherapist, author, educator, parent coach, and married mother of 2. On this show, we'll discuss everything from the most up-to-date practicals of best supporting your young children, to thriving in relationship as a family, to more surprising topics around the psychology and development of babies and children from conception through age 5. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm thrilled to have you here today. Welcome back to Prepared for Parenthood. I'm really excited today to have our guest, Susanna Peace Lovell, a co-host of the Brave Together podcast, support and community for caregiving parents, and a connection circle leader for We Are Brave Together, a supportive community for mothers raising children with disabilities. She's a contributing author in the new book, Suddenly Brave Together, Letters to Caregiving Moms in a Defining Moment of Their Lives, which was just released in May of 2026. And she also has a memoir, Your True Self is Enough. In Susanna's letter, she shares her journey raising her 19-year-old daughter with ASD, ADHD, severe allergies, and anxiety. Welcome, Susanna. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Hey, Stephanie, thank you so much for having me.
Can you just share a little bit about your journey of motherhood and about your 2 books?
Yeah, it's so nice to have a minute to sort of reflect back on the journey and conversation right now with you. And I also am reminded my daughter actually recently turned 20, so she's now 20. And 20 years ago, when I became a first time mother, there were not podcasts, there were not all of these resources and support. So I'm so appreciative for the work that you're doing. And I wish so badly it was something that I had access to all of those years ago. It would have been tremendously supportive for sure. So my journey started off actually before I even became a mother. I was really so very crystal clear about one thing growing up. And that is that no matter what career I might have, I wanted to, for sure, absolutely, without question, become a mother. And it just has been the strongest conviction of my life in my 52 years on this earth. Like, for sure, I'm going to be a mother. I can't wait to be a mother. Of course, I wanted multiple children. I wanted at least 4, possibly 5. I came from a big family. And so I just had these visions of a big family with kids running in and out and dogs and cats and all kinds of fun things. And of course, a spouse and husband and all of those things. And, things sort of didn't quite work out the way that I had initially and originally envisioned for them to look like. But one thing did happen, and that is I did become a mother. And I was so happy and elated and grateful and excited. I was married at the time, and I couldn't wait for her to come into the world and fulfill my dreams of this perfect motherhood life, right? With all of the chaos and the joyful laughter. And, again, I had this vision about all of how that was going to be presented in my life. And so once my daughter was born, her name is Arizona. Once Arizona was born, well, first of all, my pregnancy was just not ideal at all. It was very challenging. I threw up for 7 months of my pregnancy. I just never felt great. There was never a day where I was like, this is really fun. But I knew that it was also temporary. I knew that it was like, ultimately, I'm going to give birth and things are going to be better. But I had a really hard time during that transitional phase. And then I had my daughter, Arizona, about a week past her due date. And that was sort of my first understanding of like, oh, this has nothing to do with me. Meaning, yes, it does. I mean, I'm carrying this child, but, it's not up to me how this child will be and become and interact and behave and present. That's not up to me. And so that was a quick lesson early on. And that just sort of became a running theme in my lifetime over the next couple of years. Even now, my daughter is 20. So I had my daughter, and she commanded so much attention from a very early age. And right away, there were some medically complex things happening in terms of, severe colic and just lots of crying and discomfort. I had issues. I was listening to one of your recordings around breastfeeding. And I mean, that could have been a whole 3 chapters in my book. I talk a little bit about it in my memoir, but just issues with eczema, head to toe covered. And turns out there were a lot of food allergies, but that took some while to really diagnose, and just so on and so forth. And then ultimately, you also talk about this PMADs, right?
Pre and perinatal mood disorders.
Yeah, I had never heard about that. And I fell into a crazy, deep, dark abyss of postpartum anxiety, which turned into depression. So, I'm navigating all of these things in addition to lack of sleep, in addition to a daughter who's crying all day, every day, and covered in eczema and, having a hard time. So my journey starts with this sort of new vision of motherhood that I'm now living that I wasn't expecting at all. And yet I still felt hopeful initially because I was like, well, I know what I'm doing. I grew up with 4 siblings. I was always babysitting someone. We were a very tight knit community growing up, had, kids running in and out of the house. I was, again, like just a little mommy to my younger siblings. And I felt very capable in terms of being able to handle motherhood. And so even though it was really challenging, I just was like, that's okay. It'll be fine. Okay. So I'll be the mom who has the kid with allergies. That's okay. I'll figure it out. I'll figure out how to cook what she needs and make sure the home is safe. Anyway, but at every stage, there was something new that I was learning about Arizona. And ultimately, there were some developmental questions around her different and unique way of doing things and behaving and presenting. And so after the very challenging diagnosis of allergies and then asthmatic episodes throughout the years. So I had allergies, asthma. Then I started hearing about atypical disorder, auditory processing disorder. We found a developmental pediatrician who ultimately diagnosed Arizona with autism spectrum disorder when she was about 2.5. And then a few years later, when we were actually able to officially test her for ADHD, that came back also as a diagnosis when she was about 6 years old. And then from that point onward, it has been a lot of like anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder. So it's so interesting that all of her diagnoses happen to start with the letter A. And, as we are going through all of these therapies and meeting with the occupational therapist and the speech therapist and behavior therapists and developmental pediatricians and anything under the sun, they were all treating her for her myriad diagnoses. And I remember when she was 5 or 6 and just really having a season of suffering, I was also suffering. And I was laying on an acupuncture table trying to find ways to calm my own anxiety. I mean, I honestly feel like we are forever postpartum after we have our children. And so I was really struggling too. And I was sitting there and I had this epiphany on the acupuncture table that, oh my goodness, like here we are treating Arizona for all of her diagnoses, the symptoms of her diagnoses that all happen to start with the letter A. But actually, A is for Arizona. Like I literally had this crazy awakening of A is for Arizona. You know what I mean? How can I now lean into and working with her team of support folks, supporting her for who she is, like exactly who she is intrinsically at her core, this perfectly whole being who is not broken and doesn't need to be fixed. I really had this like, okay, so how can we start leaning into who Arizona is and support her along the way? And so once I had that epiphany, something shifted within me. It had been very challenging to access joy for myself. I just felt like, this is my job. This is sort of my lot in life to be her biggest advocate and supporter and guide. And do all the things and run around and take her to all of the therapies that she needed. But I just felt like, yes. And also, I want to lean into this journey and I want to lean into this experience with her and find ways to have this beautiful, great adventure together and find joy and happiness and contentedness, right? And peace. I mean, that's something that I had been questing for quite some time. So I decided, it didn't happen overnight for sure, but I decided that, okay, I want to be happy. I want to experience a joyful, purposeful life that feels intentional, that feels like I'm making a difference, not just in my daughter's life, but in my own life. And then for everyone else that are part of our community and circle, how can I bring everyone in together to have this experience with me? So that's kind of the introduction to my life becoming my work. And so now, today, again, my daughter's now 20, I find this beautiful integrated life that I'm living where I am raising her and supporting her. There are so many things that are happening together in a parallel way. We're growing up together. We're learning new things together. We're learning how to be in this world consciously. And I get to also provide support and a platform and share all of my resources and tools with other amazing disability families along the way in any way that I can. And so I'm a coach, I'm an advocate, I'm a published author and speaker, and I'm also, as you mentioned, a podcast co host. And I'm deeply, deeply, deeply just invested in this community, in this work. I feel like for me, going through all of this earlier on, I felt so alone. I felt so isolated. I felt helpless. I felt hopeless. I felt so dumb. I felt like, wow, I got a great degree from a great university and I felt very resourceful and tenacious. And then all of a sudden I was like, I don't even know what to do.
I just have to say, I'm so moved and I just so love your story, Susanna, about your journey and the A for Arizona and how do you lean in when things are challenging with your child or your children? How do we lean in as parents? And if we don't feel like we have that community, how do we build it? Right? You built your community, you built your support in a time when some of these things were less available for you. And I would love to hear about that piece of how did you
Yeah.
do that? How did you build that? How did you create that? Especially, like you said, we're always kind of postpartum. And
Yes.
so if we're experiencing our own challenges with parenting, and we're not feeling great with how things are in the world. Like, where's my support? Where are my people? How do I do this? This is really challenging in a lot of ways. And how do I lean into this? How did you do that?
Yeah. And again, that was another thing that didn't happen overnight. And I think it just started off with a really, really quiet whisper within, which was the consciousness around what it is that I needed. And I remember just, I have multiple siblings, but no one lived around here, really. I had a sister who already had some kiddos of her own. And I just remember always wanting to talk to my mom and my sisters and just understanding, like leaning in, like, I just need to share some things. I have some things on my heart. I need help. I need support. And just asking for that. And then I was also one of the first of my girlfriends to have children. So I didn't have that part of my community. Now I do. Now I have girlfriends who have kiddos and we're all just one big happy family. But just really the consciousness around, okay, I need help. I need support. And it was different because I would go to the playgrounds and I would go to mommy and me classes, but my daughter Arizona wasn't able to respond and interact kind of like how all of the other kids were. And so it wasn't fun. I couldn't just sit with a mom and talk to a mom, and have those mommy conversations because my kid was just taking off, running away, or my kid was not sitting still in the circle time for the mommy and me class, just off doing their own thing. So very early on, I realized I have to create something that works for me. And I will say that I realize it's easier for us to actually be at home. Again, all of the food allergies. So it's not like, let's go hang out at a play place. Kiddos are eating their cheese puffs and things and touch everything. And Arizona was allergic. I mean, it was really like every little thing was so important in terms of keeping her safe. And so I just started a business early on that was around gently used maternity and baby and kid stuff. And so I connected with moms through that. I put together some little play groups and invited people over. So that was helpful. It was also, I have to say, a little bit depressing when I would see that Arizona was not interacting the way other kids were interacting. And so that was like a big ouch for me. But ultimately, I just started inviting my friends, even who didn't have kids. I'm like, just can you come over and just hang out? I'll cook dinner, right? How about we do a potluck brunch on a Saturday? And I just slowly and intentionally just built people around me in Arizona. And especially after her father and I separated and ultimately got divorced, she was probably around 7 or 8 at the time. And I just remember thinking, I need all of the chosen aunties and uncles. And at that point, yeah, people were starting to have kids. Actually, well before she even was 7 or 8, like when she was 2, 3, 4, we had some friends in the tribe, as we call it. So that's what I did. And now I just feel like I move around this life with this collective chosen family. And again, like my siblings are all in Minnesota and Boston and Ohio. And so we see each other when we can, but it's not 15 minutes down the street. Hey, Auntie Gaia, Auntie Anita is going to come by and bring one of the kids and we'll just have a meal together. And that has been one of the most supportive practices in my life for me, even my own mental health. And then when I first discovered We Are Brave Together, which is a beautiful, loving community for moms who are raising kids, including adult children with unique needs, disabilities. I first met Jessica Pate, who is the executive director and founder of We Are Brave Together back in 2020, right before the pandemic. And so that has been one of the most beautiful gifts for me is the community of moms who just sort of get it. We all have different walks of life, different backstories. Our kids have different diagnoses, but ultimately, there are a lot of things that are very, very familiar with moms who are raising children who have disabilities. So being connected to We Are Brave Together began to expand my tribe, my community. And now I just feel like there's such an abundance of whatever support I need. I know I have so many people that I can reach out to. If I want to, sometimes I'd rather just write in my journal and reflect and do my own thing. But it's so beautiful to really feel like palpably like I am not alone in this journey, right?
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing for parents to hear. I think especially birth moms who are needing community. No matter what your child is like, it's so important to have other people who get it, who get what you're going through, who can talk about the same kinds of things that you're talking about and who really show up for each other. It's one of the pieces that I kind of lament about our society.
Yes,
You
totally.
really have to work hard usually to have that kind of support unless you're living close to a family that you're close to. And some people live
Mhm.
close to families and they're not close. That was also a challenge in our house of how do I find my people who are going to get it and want to hang out and talk about what I'm talking about that's happening with my child right now. And so any way that people can find that, I feel like that community for parents is so critical. So I'm thrilled that you found that and also that you help create it for others.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think I will continue to seek it out. There are different stages, as you know, in motherhood, different seasons. And so, yeah, I need all the people around me
for
to get
sure. For
it.
sure.
Yes.
We've been speaking today with Susanna Peace Lovell. She's an author, podcaster, parent, and advocate for disability parents. So happy to have you here today, Susanna. Can you share how people can get in touch with you and learn more about you and your books?
Sure. Yeah. I have a website that is my full name. I'll say it first and then I'll spell it for you all. It's Susanna Peace Lovell. My middle name is Peace. My parents gave that to me when I was born in 1974. And I'm so grateful for that reminder every day. I need so much peace in my life. And it's spelled SusannaPeaceLovell.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at Mama Peace, MAMAPEACE. I have links to everything, my books, how to be in touch with me. I have an online course. Certainly, We Are Brave Together. That is actually weareBraveTogether.org. And you can find our support groups. I run the Los Angeles-based Connection Circle. We also have a lot of virtual offerings. I'm very easy to be in touch with, and I respond to everything.
And I will put all of that information into the show notes for people. So nice to have you on today, Susanna. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with our audience, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Prepared for Parenthood podcast today. I hope you found this episode educational, informational, and conversational, and that you'll join me again for another episode soon. If you enjoyed listening to today's podcast, I'd very much appreciate if you would rate, review, and subscribe. If you're interested in more information related to today's podcast, or are looking for parent coaching or courses, you can find my information in the show notes or online at preparedforparenthood.com.